The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode 170.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks called Mugato, Gumato. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thank you. And Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy.
Folks, I want to remind you to like The Secrets of Star Trek on our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and let others know about the show. We really appreciate it when you do that. Also, I want to remind you of another show that you'll enjoy on the StarQuest Network called called Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. The Secrets of Jimmy Akin's, no, just Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. That's right. Jimmy has this other show, and if you don't know about it, you ought to know about it. It covers all kinds of mysteries, both natural, supernatural, from a faith and reason perspective, and we've had some great discussions lately and some really good stuff coming up. You don't want to miss it. So wherever you find podcasts, or at sqpn.com/mysterious. But today we're talking about Mugato Gumato. So, Jimmy, can you give us a quick recap of this episode?
Last week on Lower Decks, we got a Mariner Tendi girls adventure. So this week we get a Boimler Rutherford boys adventure. Shax continues to be Bax, and he is heading the security program again, apparently. So he leads the boys and Mariner and some other people on an animal control mission down to a planet where a Mugato has been unexpectedly detected. Mugatos are the poisonous albino one-horned gorillas from the original series episode A Private Little War. This time, the Cerritos gang discovers an illegal Ferengi operation on the planet that is farming Mugatos and harvesting their horns as contraband, kind of like rhino horn or elephant tusk is here on real-life Earth. And the Ferengi end up capturing almost all of the away team. Before heading down to the planet, Boimler and Rutherford hear a rumor that Mariner is a Black Ops super soldier with programmed training that could lead her to snap and kill them all. While on the mission, they see evidence that this is true and suspect Mariner isn't really their friend, but has just been using them as part of her cover as a super spy. But it turns out she is their friend and just started the rumor so that people would think she's even cooler than she is. Ultimately, Boimler and Rutherford save the day by using their nerdy diplomatic skills to show the Ferengi a better business model that will make them more profit if they run a Mugato nature preserve instead of a Mugato illegal horn farm. The Ferengi then release everybody. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Dr. T'Ana orders Tendi to scan the last remaining crew members who have been avoiding their medical scans, and she proves herself by getting all of them, including the reluctant Dr. T'Ana herself. Tendi impresses the doctor by getting her medical scan, even though it means exploiting the fact that Tendi has broken her arm so badly it results in a compound or open fracture. And then she sneakily scans Dr. T'Ana as she comes up to help with the hideous fracture. The end.
So I have to admit, this was not as good as other episodes. And mostly because of one scene, I think we could all agree.
And we should mention this. I know there are several people like Lindsay Sant with the Catholics of Oz does not let his kids see every episode because there are episodes that have inappropriate. This is definitely one episode that do not let your kids see.
Depending on their ages and other factors.
Sure.
So I don't think this episode is that bad. There's one scene.
Yeah.
And the rest of the episode is fine. In fact, the rest of the episode has good things in it. The one scene is a scene where Mugatos are mating, but it's less explicit than if you watch the Nature Channel.
Well,
it's more suggestive.
Hang on, let me finish. It is. We do not see. We do not see direct mating on camera. We see things that go around the edge of that, and there is a third Mugato present who performs suggestive actions, but it is very brief. And so it is, I didn't like the scene either, but I wouldn't judge the entire episode by it. And I wouldn't say no children under 18. If they can watch the Nature Channel, there will be some who parents might find I just hesitate to make proclamations for every single family.
Right.
I would say I would let my kids watch the Nature Channel, but I wouldn't want to have to explain some of the jokes in that scene to my
and that's a parental choice. They may not want to explain everything.
Yeah.
Well, that's where I made the qualifier about Lindsay, where he stated on Catholics of Oz very recently that he does let his kids watch several episodes, but not all of them, because of some of the stuff that's there. And that's why I said, if you're like that, don't let them watch this episode. This is not one to do that. It's advice. This is advice. Obviously, parents, you know your children better than any of us do, but this is just us giving our my feedback on what I think, that if you're that way where you won't let them see other episodes because of suggestive content, this is one of those that you might want to skip.
Apart from that scene, there was lots to like about it. The usual Lower Deck stuff was fun. So the last thing I guess I'd say about it is that I've never watched Rick and Morty, but I heard some people who were fans of Rick and Morty saying that who are also the same creators of Lower Decks, they had a tendency to kind of move in that direction over time of being more suggestive and stuff. And I hope it doesn't do that. I hope we stick with the formula that has worked for Lower Decks and not push the boundaries in that way, and make it something that we can all watch with and not feel awkward as our kids are watching it.
I will say that I have not been pleased that the last 3 episodes have involved it's hard to say notable content in this area, but some content in this area.
Yeah.
We had a Klingon helmet 2 episodes ago. We had a Cation scratching post 1 episode ago, and then we actually kind of saw mating in this episode.
Yeah.
And I don't want that trend to continue.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the rest of the episode. The title, Mugato Gumato, is a reference, which is a kind of a funny reference. Apparently, DeForest Kelley, who played Dr. McCoy, in the original A Private Little War from the original series, had trouble saying the original name of the creatures, which was Gumato. He apparently just could not get it out. So they changed it to Mugato. But then
you're an actor, not a doctor, man. Say the word.
Yeah. And then Shatner and Kelly throughout that episode kept calling it Mugatu. It's just hysterical. And they didn't bother, like, it's the 60s. They didn't redo it in ADR, like the dialogue post-processing, or they just kept it in. And and it's a little bit of, tomato, let's call the whole thing off there. So I just thought that was funny.
Well, and then there's Boimler and Rutherford are sitting there. Boimler's talking to Rutherford, and it's like, it's amazing. They've got 3 different pronunciations for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, it is amazing.
And we get even more as we go along. And they play with it so that even the characters on screen a single character on screen will pronounce it multiple ways and just be inconsistent. So like Shax pronounces it several different ways. They also meet this Tellarite hippie biologist scientist guy
with an Australian accent.
With an Australian accent, yeah. His name is Patingi, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
And he is real. He's a lot of fun.
Yes.
They're on the run from the Mugatos, and Mugatos, as these one-horned albino gorillas with like razorback horns and poison, are actually very effective. I mean, gorillas have always been effective in animation, you know, when they're like howling and beating their chest and stuff. And seeing a Mugato do that in the middle of a darkened forest is very effective in animation. And the Mugatos were always, you know, kind of memorable from A Private Little War. They even put them in the end credits in many episodes. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember that scary thing. And the Mugato was kind of a nice 60s for a show without a huge, massive budget. It's an effective, I mean, okay, albino ape with horns and poison. That's pretty good as a monster. And so you have the Boimler and Rutherford on the run in this darkened forest from a Mugato. They run into this Patingi guy who's really friendly and seems to know what he's talking about. He explains he's a biologist, and I've got 5 books on Mugatos. and then as they're walking along, he's making these grunting noises. And they're just so impressed with him. They're talking to each other. Isn't Patingi awesome? Yeah, man, he's the best. And he's talking about how as a result of his reading, he's like become one of them. And they're saying, can we be in your next book? And he's like, oh, I don't write. I've read 5 books about Mugos. He's just varied the pronunciation again. I mean, nobody else calls them Mugotos or Mugos. That's just him. But he says he feels like he can pass as one of them now because he can make their noises. And at that point, one of them bites his head off.
Right. I was trying to say I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. That would have been a great addition to that. Yeah.
But we get Mugato, Mugutu, Gumato, Mugoto, Mugos, and a few others, if I'm not mistaken.
So it has the episode kind of gets this Jurassic Park vibe to it at that point, you know, right around there. So they've gone in, they're going to break into this compound where the Ferengi are holding all the Mugato, and we see them like pulling a baby Mugato away from its mother, and oh, we're very sympathetic, and then they accidentally release all the Mugato into the like I said, it becomes very Jurassic Park at that point. When I thought there might be more very specific Jurassic Park references. They didn't really go there, but it would have been fun to have a little more of that. But it was
great with the Ferengi, and they specifically called them this last outpost Ferengi. So they were just like, you know, the last outpost, the first episode of TNG where we see Ferengi, and they're very much like that. They're dressed with like the fur outfits. In fact, the head one's actually got a Mugato.
Whips.
Yeah, they got the whips. The head, they got the fur coat of the Mugato with the horn and everything. And
right. Yeah, and they very consciously call them like last outpost for Ferengi, which is very fourth wall breaking.
Yeah,
and they even said, "Have you heard of Quark?"
Yeah. So, although I do want to jump back and talk a little bit about Mariner's the situation where she's supposed to be like a black ops. We started the episode. The teaser starts with an Enbo Jitsu contest with Rutherford and Boimler versus Mariner, and they're like
Ambo Jitsu was a sport martial art thing introduced in like the first, maybe second season of Next Gen.
Yeah.
Where Will Riker fights his father using it. And it's like, oh man, what a painful episode.
It's kind of a dumb sport. I mean, it's sort of you have a shield in front of your face, like you can't see. You're supposed to fight by your other senses. And it's like, I suppose it's supposed to recall like Luke Skywalker in the Force, except you don't have the Force. We don't.
Yeah, this is wrong universe for this sport.
Yeah, it's like a combination of like the Jedi training and amok times, fighting with those the ball thingies. Yeah, it was very weird.
But also just on the plot level, fighting your father. I mean, literally physically fighting your father to work out childhood issues is bad television.
Obvious. Yes, very. Well, in this case, they like that's one of the things I like about Lower Decks is they take all the things that were kind of like weird, uncomfortable, kind of badly thought out in all the other series, and they bring it in and embrace it and elevate it to comedic effect. And that's what they do with the Ambo Jitsu, because Mariner goes psycho on them. Like they're like, we've been working out, we've been practicing, so you don't have to hold back anymore. She's like, really? And like she goes nutso on them and really is beating the heck out of them, knocking teeth out.
At first they hurt her, they've drawn blood, and it's like, oh, we're so sorry, Mariner, and she's like, this is great. Now I can finally have a real workout. And they've told her she can take the kid gloves off, and she's wiping the floor with them. And Rutherford is like, put the kid gloves back on, put the kid gloves back on.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I love Shax where he's next. You know, they got 20 minutes and he's next, and he shows up and help. You know, help is like, oh no, you're good. I'm just here 10 minutes early. You still got plenty of time.
Yeah.
He's like, no big deal.
Yeah. Save me, baby bear. So, so later on, when Rutherford and Boimler are in the lounge, the ship's lounge, and they're talking to the bartender named Honus, which the only other Honus I've ever heard of is Honus Wagner, the famous baseball card. The most valuable baseball card in history is Honus Wagner's like rookie card or something. Anyway, his name is Honus. Is that an Irish accent or a?
No, it's meant to be kind of Southern.
Oh, okay.
Was it? I was thinking more Boston-ish there, Dom.
No, it's definitely not a Boston accent. Yeah.
No, I mean, I thought it was thinking it was trying to be one.
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah.
It's a mixed accent using different elements, but like you'll notice he uses ifin.
Oh, yeah.
And it's meant to be kind of like an old-timey accent, and they've drawn him as an older man.
Right.
And he apparently is a total gossip.
Yes. Like any good bartender. And so he's got this rumor that Mariner is a specially trained Black Ops agent who, when her back is up against the wall, she goes psycho and will sacrifice everybody else in order to survive. And then cites like a previous ship she was on where half the crew disappeared.
The Atlantis, yeah. Yes. And as he's explaining this to Mariner and Boimler at the bar, Rutherford is in the background at a table
other way around. Mariner's at the table.
Mariner is at the table by herself, using a Klingon dagger to play a game that, as a kid, I would know as Mumbly Peg, but it is also referred to as the knife game, pin finger, knife fingies, five-finger fillet, and the stab between the fingers game.
Yep.
That's pretty descriptive, the stab between the fingers game, right? So, yeah, and she's playing it at high speed. And it's like, is she Section 31? That's what I was thinking. And in fact, it's Rutherford later on who actually voices it. She's Section 31, which is kind of funny given that Section 31 is supposed to be so super secret no one even knows the name. And they've kind of used it enough now.
This is a few years after Deep Space Nine, so.
Yeah.
Well, they even mentioned about, Dominion War where they had Section 31 spies on all the ships and everything.
Right. So that's what comes up when they're on the surface. They see there's all the craziness of the Mugato escaping. They turn and see her stabbing Shax in the chest and then sucking his blood out. And it's like, she's eating him. And they run away. Yeah. Well, it turns out she was, sucking out the poison from the Mugato.
She was doing snake bite treatment for him. Yeah.
Which don't do. That is not real. Don't ever do that. Don't ever suck snake bite poison. That's a Boy Scout thing.
By the way, they also explain why everyone else on her previous ship, the Atlantis, vanished, and mysteriously, because it's not in the Starfleet records. She explains that the entire crew got Kerplickian lice and had to be evacuated, and of course they kept it out of the formal report. Do you know how embarrassing it would be for Starfleet to admit losing a starship to lice?
That would be embarrassing. That would definitely be embarrassing. Yeah, they were also told they can't use phasers on the Mugato because they're endangered. They're an endangered species, so you can't just shoot them. So that comes up.
Yeah, I do like the whole concept of the episode of, oh, great, this is an animal control mission.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, Captain Freeman kind of complains, like, why do we keep getting animal control ops? Oh, it's another one. Which is, they have had a few of them recently, actually. They've had to take care of animals, I think. Mariner has a good line when she's captured by the Ferengi. She kind of calls out something that fans have been calling out all along, which is people could just replicate whatever they want. Why would they buy it from you? You're not, Ferengi aren't very smart.
Because specifically the quote is she's in a cage that the Ferengi have her trapped in, and she's talking to them, and she says, you guys could just replicate stuff, like the stuff you buy with Latinum. You could just replicate. You guys are dumb.
Right. So, yeah.
There's some other great lines in this. I love. So on Tendy's personal side mission, where the doctor has tasked her to get the scans of all of the crew members who've been dodging them, and we see a montage of her sneaking up on people, getting their scans until she's got one left. And it turns out it's Dr. Ta'ana herself. And Dr. Ta'ana is like, why should I see a doctor? I am the doctor. I don't need a second opinion.
Right.
And she explains that she is impressed with Tendi having gotten this far, and now says for her to give up. And in fact, she says, I was counting on you to give up. And Tendi says, maybe the old Tendi would have given up, but a lot has changed since slightly earlier today, which is an awesome line.
That is
and
good.
Then they play on the fact that Dr. Ta'ana is a Cation, and so she is jumping around like a cat, fleeing
Yeah.
Tendi, and Tendi says, bad, Dr. Ta'ana, bad.
And she's hissing and spitting and clawing at her. Yeah.
Well, that also plays into the stereotype of that doctors and nurses are the worst patients.
Yes.
And it's so true. It really is.
Yeah.
I like on the planet where after as Boimler and Rutherford confront Mariner about is she a Black Ops agent or not, she's gotten her foot trapped in like the 30th or 24th century equivalent of a bear trap.
Right.
And which is actually pretty cool. I guess the Ferengis were using it to either catch people or escape Mugatos. But it you step in it and it traps your foot in a force field. And so they're talking to her, and she tells them that she's not the super spy. They're going to have to be the super awesome secret agents because everyone else has been captured. And so they're lacking confidence in themselves, but they sneak up on the illegal Mugato farm, and Boimler and Rutherford are looking down at the complex, and they're talking to each other. And they earlier had been playing a game called Diplomath, which was about negotiating compromises and stuff. Like if we're both unhappy, but we can live with it, it's a success. We've compromised. And Mariner rightly regarded that as extremely nerdy. But as they're looking down at the compound, Boimler says, we do have special powers right here. And he taps his forehead, and Rutherford gets excited and says, our skin. and Boimler says, our brains. And Rutherford quickly says, our brains.
Yeah, brains, right. Brains are inside of our skin.
Yeah.
I think the brains are inside of our skin.
Oh, wow. I was just like, what fabulous skin powers were you imagining?
Yeah, and so after that...
It can keep bacteria away from our muscles. Yay!
Yeah.
So they end up going down into the camp, and I love the fact that what saves the day is essentially the 24th century equivalent of a PowerPoint presentation on the cost-benefit analysis of a Mugato preserve versus a Mugato selling for parts. And I love it, they're saved by a PowerPoint. And Mariner, Shax is like, Mariner, what's happening? Because he's waking up. And she says, those two beautiful nerdy men are negotiating us to safety using the power of math. It's just it was very good. That was very funny.
And I like how at the end the Ferengi leader is like, well, I'm normally not big on releasing prisoners, but I can't argue with your profit margin. And Boimler and Rutherford are like, yeah, we really kind of should be taking you into custody too, but we want you to stop this. And hey, neither one of us is happy with it, but we can both live with it. Compromise.
Well, I love that the projector looks just like the cannon that Kirk created to fight against the Gorn.
Right. They'd constructed a cannon out of a bazooka out of the found parts, but instead it was a PowerPoint projector. One thing we didn't mention at all was this other character called Kink, and he was apparently buying the illegal Mugato stuff from the Ferengi. And when Starfleet showed up, he hopped into his ship.
You just said Mugato.
Yeah, I said Mugato, like Mugos. Yeah, the Mugos. The Mugos, the Gumatos. So he was buying Gumato stuff, and and when Starfleet showed up, he hopped in his shuttle and was taking off. And Captain Freeman, who hadn't heard from the away team, was like, "Stop that ship! Put it in a tractor beam." And when they did, it started to come apart, and it has to beam him aboard. And she's all apologetic. He's like, "You destroyed my ship." Well, it turns out
it's pretty effective. It's like, my whole life was on that ship. Well, you can just imagine what they would be like if they destroyed your ship and that's where you lived.
Right. And so she offers like to compensate him by giving him one of Cerritos' shuttles, and Ransom's like, "Well, how will we explain that to Starfleet?" "Well, just tell me we lost it in a black hole again."
He's like, wouldn't be the first one.
The Voyager shuttle problem. So and then he's like, "Well, what about all my stuff?" And she's like, "Well, what kind of stuff do you want?" "Well," and he's looking at her shelves of mementos and starts naming all the things on her shelves. And later on, when Admiral Freeman, her husband, calls, it's like, "Hey, don't get caught. By the way, don't get caught by this scam that's going on in that sector by these people who are pretending to have their ships destroyed by Starfleet and then stealing them blind." And she's like, "What?" And they have to get it back from him. But
using
by the way,
a junk ship that will purposefully self-destruct.
Right.
And now we've got a phrase. So we've had warp factor. Well, now we've got tractor factor. Tractor factor is how strong the tractor beam is.
Yeah. What's the tractor factor? And he ends up being, instead of being arrested, they sentence him to working at Mugato land, shoveling Mugato dung, which is apparently a lot of it. They make a lot of it. Also, Shax really grossly uses the Mugato dung to track them. We didn't mention that earlier.
Samples it
by
twice.
sampling it. Oh, like, oh, dude, don't.
I love the reaction of the lower deckers. Boimler or
even
Mariner looks like she's ready to heave.
Yeah,
she looks like she's ready to heave right there.
Yeah, gross and funny.
It is a nice illustration, though, of how hardcore Shax is.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So, and then the episode does end with them back in the lounge, and Mariner's the one who tells Honus, the bartender, about Boimler and Rutherford being the Mugato twins and how they fought off. Like, she creates a new rumor that extols their abilities and builds them up way beyond the reality, and so that's going to be a fun thing for them for the future. So kind of shows her showing her appreciation for them. So.
Also, something that I didn't notice it the first time I watched this, but I rewatched it with closed captioning on, and twice in the episode, at the ends of the two scenes where we have Honus the bartender, he's talking to someone, and we hear an off-camera voice telling him to get back to work. And in the closed captioning, it indicates that that's like his supervisor. But then when they change the shot and he moves to get back to work, you can't see the supervisor.
Right.
So I didn't look up who voiced the supervisor. It may be someone interesting, but I'm wondering if they're going to have a recurring gag of the unseen 10 forward supervisor character that we'll occasionally hear.
So apparently the voice is done by the same guy who does Admiral Freeman. So I'm not sure if but yeah, he's manager, listed as off-screen voiceover manager. So maybe that's a thing, and we'll get Honus as a regular denizen of the of the lounge. I have to say, I love the lounge's logo. Have you seen it? It's the Cerritos logo, but instead of a star shooting through it, it's a olive on a toothpick.
Yeah.
I kind of want that on a glass or something.
Yeah, you can get T-shirts with that. I'm kind of tempted to.
Oh, that is good. That is good. All right. Anything else to say, Father Cory? Anything left on this?
So right after the credits, we see a couple of explorers, or a couple, I guess you could call them, I don't know if they're botanists or what they were, but they're exploring the planet, and they're the ones who first find the Mugato, and they're Denobulans.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And they puff up, how the Denobulans' faces will puff up. So I think that's the first time outside of Enterprise that we've seen Denobulans. We've heard mentions of them, but that's the first time we've seen them.
We
and I think
also
that-
see a Kazinti in the lounge, who's a member of Starfleet.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes, that's all I got.
All right. Jimmy?
So even though Shax is apparently running the security department again, Kayshawn is still on board because we see him in a martial arts session while Tindy is doing her medical scans. Also, we see Stevens again, and he's in the lounge chatting up an attractive woman and trying to impress her by talking about how he spots Ransom, I guess, in the gym, meaning like he helps him with the weights.
Right.
As if that's going to be impressive. But then Tindy sneaks up and scans him and says, "Oh, you should drink more milk. Your bones are incredibly fragile." And he's like, "No, they're not." And as he's bending over in anger at what she said about him in front of this attractive lady, we hear his bones cracking. And he hits his comm badge and it's like, "Dr. Tahana, emergency medical transport."
Oh, my hip. I think I broke my hip, which is definitely an old person thing. That was good. All right. I think that about does it for this discussion. So we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek, including James N., Eric B., Mary N., Jason M., and Tim C. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What do you think of this episode, Mugato, Gumato, Mugutu, or whatever the rest we want to say? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next week when we will be discussing the next episode of Lower Decks. Until then, Father Cory Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Tom.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thank you. And you say Gumato, I say Mugato. Let's call the whole thing off.
That's right. And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, you want me to see a doctor? I am the doctor. Doctor Who?